So, hello and welcome to Jagan Shah, former director of National Institute of Urban Affairs and premier urbanist. He's written and spoken at length on urban issues. And given what is happening in Delhi and the terrible smog that we're encased in, we thought there's no one better than Jagan to tell us what are the causes and the possible solutions to this. And we realize that much of it has to do with infrastructure, hence the InfraVision Foundation's interest in it. And Jagan is also a distinguished fellow with us, so that makes it, more appropriate that we're speaking to him. So Jagan, really, this is, of course, an annual feature, but it is also becoming grimmer by the day. And the toxic air has all kinds of implications and effects that possibly we don't even know as of now. There may be effects down the line, down the years that we're not even aware of. So really, how does it connect to the urban infrastructure that we have, and what can we do about it?
So thanks, Kaveri. I think this is of epidemic proportions, the problem of air quality, and this is something that we are reminded about when we hear about cities like Mumbai, which we never thought would actually have the same problem as Delhi, sometimes with an AQI which is worse than Delhi. And we are hearing about many locations across the country. So this is a quote-unquote human development issue, right? And therefore, it is high time that this gets ratcheted up to the national level, and all governments from top to bottom are sensitized to what air pollution does to the economy, to our prospects for the future, and especially to our human resources. Now, if we take the infrastructure aspect, air pollution is a very complex outcome of the infrastructure development that we do, not all of which is linked to causes that can be prevented per se. So let me take an example like construction dust, right? Construction has to happen if we have to build the infrastructure that the Indian economy requires, that the Indian population needs for its human development. The only problem there is construction activity happens ubiquitously. Not all of it is large construction sites managed by very responsible large construction companies, say, for instance, Lawrence and Toubro. Now, L&T can ensure the kinds of procedures that are required to minimize construction dust. It cannot be obviated altogether because construction as an activity simply produces dust. You cannot completely get rid of it. But there are ways to reduce it. But a lot of construction happens everywhere. The other major cause of air pollution, and I'm talking about the pollutants that really make a difference, like PM 2.5, which is 2.5 microns in size, and PM 2.5 is a killer in many ways, and I will just come to that. So we are talking about construction activity being ubiquitous, not all of it, in fact, very little of it regulated. Then we are talking about vehicular pollution, which can, in some cities, contribute close to 50 to 60% of the pollutants in the air. Now, these pollutants are of various kinds. Carbon dioxide, of course, is something that climate change has made us aware of, but sulfur dioxide, for instance, that comes out of fumes from internal combustion engines, nitrogen dioxide, which actually gets into your lungs and sticks to your lungs and is very difficult to take care of. And then particulate matter of various kinds and sizes, right? So PM10 is of 10 microns, PM2.5 is smaller. And we have had studies in the heart of Delhi, for instance, that even have tried to measure PM 1.0, which would, in a sense, go directly into your bloodstream. With PM 2.5 is also small enough to go into your bloodstream. So there are sources to which we attribute air pollution. There are phenomena like construction, vehicular pollution, both in terms of tailpipe emissions coming out of the exhaust pipe, but also in terms of road dust, which is caused by simply the friction of tires on the road itself. And tires are sort of continuously being abraded. So it creates a certain kind of dust, which is then blown into the air, and these are very fine particles as well. Then there are causes like solid waste. Now, solid waste, so garbage heaps of various kinds, of course, produce methane, and large dump sites produce a large amount of methane. Now, methane contributes to atmospheric phenomena. It contributes to heating of cities. Heating has a relationship with air quality, and so on and so forth. So we're dealing with air pollution being, in a sense, at the heart of a larger climate change scenario, as well as a larger environmental pollution scenario. And all of it basically points to man-made, if I could use that term without its gendered attribution, man-made causes, right? It is because of the development model that we follow. It's not totally avoidable. So the pressure that it puts onto us and to our economies is to manage it. And that management is of various kinds. One, like I said, in the case of construction sites, is that you reduce the amount of dust that is produced, or make sure that it doesn't get released into the air, at a certain level, or does not get picked up by the wind, and so on and so forth. So there are various kinds of, I'm trying to sort of simplify as well. Then there is the whole aspect of reducing it altogether from the source. So reduction of air pollution, say from internal combustion engines, can be done by simply doing away with the internal combustion engine, right? Which is what we are trying to do in India by shifting to electric mobility, which takes care of that particular cause. So you can obviate the cause itself, you can manage its impact on the environment and on the human population. And you can, between the two of those, create the kind of efficiencies that can make them even more effective. So, for instance, can we, in the period that it will take us to convert all of our vehicles to electric, can we do something about internal combustion engines? So, one of the things that India is doing is improving the standards that it imposes on vehicles. So, what is known as, currently most of our vehicles are sort of Bharat stage 3, stage 4. We are moving to stage 5 and 6. So, you actually create governance interventions that make sure that all vehicles are designed, manufactured to emit fewer pollutants. So,
Jagan, I just wanted to come in here. And one of the most important things you said right at the beginning was that it's a national issue. It is a human development issue, but also a national issue. The way it's tackled currently is really region by region, city by city, state by state. Delhi telling Punjab that, you're burning stubble, Punjab blaming Delhi. So this is, why is it that we cannot have a national policy on something that is clearly of great importance to people? That is something that really strikes me as being very strange.
Mm-hmm. No, so I think that's a fantastic question, Kaveri, because we ought to have a national recognition of the complexity of the problem. It is not that we haven't acknowledged the problem. So the National Clean Air Plan, which is shepherded by the Environment Ministry, the NCAP as it's called for short, the NCAP is a plan to reduce air pollution in a number of cities which have been identified. with an aim to actually find the kind of solutions that we require. Now, that's unfortunately working in a silo. And let me explain what that means. The Environment Ministry cannot be the only stakeholder for cleaning the air.
Yeah.
And the reason why is that you cannot mandate, the actions that we are trying to mandate are actually, in a sense, after the fact, right? So this is more in the mode of disaster management than in the mode of long-term foresight, planning, and preventive action, right? So if you were to prevent the air pollution from taking place, then you would need to have a multi-stakeholder, a multi-ministerial, multi-departmental conversation where you would be able to talk to, for instance, the Trade and Commerce Ministry, right? And to say that we want to make sure that the way in which building products are both manufactured as well as transported needs to become more efficient, right? So, which means that your entire supply chain is managed from the perspective of air quality management, right? You would need to have on board, certainly, of course, the Urban Ministry, where, it's the main custodian of all our cities and urban settlements. You need to have the Rural Development Ministry on board as well. So we are seeing a repeated example of how that matters in the fact of stubble burning. So that's a quote-unquote Rural Development Ministry's domain. Now, if they're not part of the conversation, along with the urban, along with the commerce, in a sense, the Trade and Commerce or the Food Supplies Ministry is a stakeholder in the way that farmers produce their, or manage their fields, produce food grain for our cities. Now, then the transportation, the Road Transport Ministry is a stakeholder, the Railways Ministry is a stakeholder. So, if we want to take this seriously, then we have to make it a national issue in the sense that it is a multi-departmental and a multi-federal as well as local level government issue. So this is not something that we can take lightly. And I think that's the key message I would give, which is that the impact, you mentioned earlier, right from the beginning, that this has long-standing effects as well.
Exactly, right? Which we can't even tell currently, we don't know.
Well, the science is there, Kaveri. I have to tell you that actually that's not true entirely. The science on the impacts of air pollution on the human population is fairly well developed. For instance, the fact that PM 2.5 or smaller pollutants, as well as nitrogen dioxide, this impacts children in a very, very dangerous way. Carbon monoxide reduces actually it impacts the growth of the brain itself. So small children sitting in buses with open windows, say at a traffic intersection where it takes 5 or 6 minutes and they're exposed to pollutants for 5 or 6 minutes, which is immense. Their brain development is impacted. All of us, middle-aged as well as elderly, as well as younger populations, our lung capacity is being impacted. The polluted lung and the healthy lung, these two images, if you juxtapose them, one looks pink, the other looks black, right?
You're absolutely right. And, in fact, I was just thinking, when we think of something like the Bhopal gas leak, I mean, it happened in one night, but its impact, of course, was magnified and focused in a particular area. And the gas was terribly, terribly poisonous. But the impact lasted generations. It continues to affect people. So we tend to, and we've just come out of an epidemic, but we tend to forget all this, and we tend to look at it in terms of, Delhi is the highest or Mumbai is the highest. It's not some kind of a scorecard that we're keeping, right? We have to approach it from the angle of, it could be you next. It could be, today it's Delhi, tomorrow it could be Maharashtra, day after it could be any other state. Indeed. So I think that I think is very significant, what you're saying. The other thing that you said is that it's a human development issue. So that whole balance that we've learned now to at our great cost is between development and ecology and health. That is something we have to keep in mind all the time in every single policy that we make now, right?
No, absolutely. I think the human development story is a crucial one.
Right.
We have to, in fact, my wife was mentioning yesterday to me that, she finds this headline in the newspapers to be extremely obnoxious, which says that air pollution is a great leveler. Just as we were saying that, COVID is a great leveler. But actually, that's not true.
Yeah.
It has disproportionate impact on different sections of our society. So there's one. So the human development story again is at sort of two levels at least. One is that it affects all of us because it impairs the growth of the body itself, possibly in the case of children, the brain. So it impacts all of us in terms of health. And in that sense, it impacts all of us more or less the same in a physiological sense. But the other is the human development story in terms of the inequality or the unequal impacts it has. Now, because we are in somewhat, highly segregated and unequal society, we tend to not think of what the nation pays as a price because of that. So it's all right for me to be, let's say, a typical sort of middle class NIMBY, or somebody who's blasé and doesn't really care about what happens to the poor and the downtrodden. But having said that, because they are highly susceptible and the concentration of pollutants that they are exposed to, because of that, our public health system gets burdened. I mean, that's just one example, right? Because of that, our workforce gets impacted as well, because we are talking about a growing economy that requires skilled manpower, skilled human resources at all levels of the economy, right from the basic services, the management of transportation and such like, which are lower skilled jobs, construction jobs, and right up to the top. So this is something that doesn't spare anybody. But the loss to the economy is registered at every level of the society. In one way or the other, it is a loss. If a lot of poor people land up in your public hospitals, let's say they might even have the public insurance covered that we are providing as a society, as a welfare state, then they burden the state, right? If your hospital beds are full of people who are sick, then tomorrow, if there is a pandemic, what happens? Which is something that we actually experienced at the time of COVID as well, because you need spare beds. So, it is not an issue, like there are other issues as well. It is not an issue we can ignore. We ignore at our peril, and we cannot treat it as an issue that we will fix after the fact, because it actually can't be fixed after the fact. A child's development.
Sorry.
No, I was just saying that a child's development at an early stage of life, you can't recover it. There's no,
Exactly. I think the other point that I wanted to raise with you is, have you come across any city, either in history or contemporary, according to you, that has actually tackled nation that has actually tackled this issue and done it with a fair amount of success?
Oh, absolutely. I think there are some stellar examples. The battle with air pollution has been has thrown up a lot of different kinds of solutions, and different countries have sort of managed to utilize them. But if there is one sort of significant example of a city that sets out to solve a problem and then sticks to to solve the problem over a longish period of time, that's London in the UK. Now that's
I was about to say,
yeah,
because Jagan, I mean, London's smog used to be so famous, or infamous rather. We all sort of grew up reading stories about it, and you don't hear that anymore. And they've done it at so many different levels, right?
That's right. That's right. So, London, in a sense, has been a trailblazer. Now there are other cities, of course, and countries like the Netherlands where, if the AQI is even at 7, and I've experienced this myself in July this year, when the AQI is 7, people are concerned. Because you see, the thing about air quality is that actually the only good air is unpolluted air, which means that, it's actually cold comfort for us to tell ourselves well, if the AQI is below 40, then we are okay. Actually, no, that's not true. Even 40 is too much. That's just a benchmark that's been created in order to move everybody, and to create a certain delta improvement. But actually, 0 is the only number. Now, the thing is that London is a city that set out in roughly around the year 2000. So that's 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. At a metropolitan scale, it created an agency called Transport for London because it had identified the traffic and transportation related pollutants to be the core cause of the acid rain that it was having and the pollutants that were beginning to affect business. The interesting part here is that, in fact, last week I had been part of a workshop in Visakhapatnam where Transport for London was represented and it was a partner. And we are working with them closely. And we learned about the fact that the issue was raised by local businesses. They went to the government and they said, this is impacting our business, it's impacting productivity, it's impacting our own quality of life, and so on. And we run the economy. We are the drivers of the economy. So please listen to us, right? It took that kind of a trigger to get the governments of the UK as well as London, and London has a number of different councils around, all of them to come together and say, okay, we need a new agency to fix this. And Transport for London was created. Now it's called Transport for London. Today it runs the tube, it runs the buses, it runs all kinds of services related to transport in London, including ferries and such like, and boats on the Thames. But the reason why it was created was to first and foremost fix the emissions that were coming from transport. So their early concern was not particulate matter. Their early concern was SO2 and NO2, because that's what was causing the kind of pollution that leads to acid rain and such like. And you don't really want that, especially in an advanced economy. PM10, PM 2.5, they progressively improve their ability, their knowledge, their analysis of problems, and their governance structures, such that they could act. And then today we've got London as having implemented an ultra low emission zone, which used to be in the center of the city only, in the so-called City of London, but now
ULEZ, which as it's called, which is
ULEZ. And interestingly enough, the University of Bath has just done a study, in fact, just a week ago, that has actually concluded that even the ULEZ is a success. And well, we could have known that, because when the Mayor of London announced the ULEZ, first, you heard a lot of news reports and sort of vox pop interviews with citizens saying, "Oh, this is terrible. I got to pay."
There was a lot of opposition to it. Yes,
but that opposition has melted because you see, the thing is that the main feature of an advanced society or an evolved economy is that they recognize that health is your most important resource, right? A healthy population is your first and foremost asset. And for an India that wants to move to a service economy, that wants to move away from the dependence on the primary sector, and will have to adopt a very different kind of manufacturing sector, which is more automated and so on, Industry 4.0 or 5.0. For an India of that kind, living in cities, if we don't fix the air pollution problem, we are both, we are both reducing our ability to sustain the economic growth, but we're damaging what we have today. We're damaging the population that exists, which is some of the most talented, creative, hardworking population on the earth. So what are we doing? We're destroying today and we're destroying the future. So, this has to be an issue that actually gathers. This is the issue that needs to be debated in parliaments and legislatures. This is the issue, right? Because it cuts across, it sort of cuts across every layer and every sphere of India's society and economy.
Jagan, just the last point, just the last question that I had. We've had examples like Bangalore's AMTA, and there was this. I think they had a legislation which I'm not sure if they've passed in Karnataka, which is activity. I think the activity law, which was supposed to resolve some of these issues from the transport point of view. How successful has that been?
So we've got an operational AMTA in Chennai called the CUMTA. We have a BMLTA bill in Bangalore, and the Karnataka Assembly had passed it. The previous government had passed it. They're looking to tweak the BMLTA bill. We have various sort of types of AMTA-like formations in Delhi, Mumbai. Now, but these are the big metropolitan agglomerations, right? Have they been successful? I can't, if the answer to that question is linked to the outcomes, right? We are not seeing the outcomes. Therefore, we cannot really say with any confidence that it has been successful. It's also early days because the UMTAs, while as a best practice, it has been talked about for more than at least close to 2 decades, but operationally, they have only appeared recently, and we can't really tell, right? I don't think it's a silver bullet. UMTA is not a silver bullet. You see, because what will happen is, again, we will lay the problem at the doorstep of one agency without having that agency empowered the way that Transport for London is empowered, for instance, and accountable, and having the governance structures that make sure that accountability filters down and so on and so forth. Without having that, having an UMTA doesn't help. So it's a step. It might be a necessary condition, but it's not a sufficient condition for solving this problem. Especially because the problem has to be solved at a scale where you've got to implement public transport in a big way. And if you talk to any public transport agency, including the Delhi Metro, they will complain. They will complain about the fact that, dealing with the bus system is a problem, dealing with the municipalities is a problem, to get last mile connectivity, implemented is a problem. So there is no way to avoid the basic fact, which is that this is a problem that must be solved through consensus, through collective action, and through scientific methods, which are measurable methods, so that you can keep the public in confidence. You can make sure that the public is vigilant and aware of what their role is in fixing this. Say, for instance, in shifting from private modes of transport to public, right? There is a responsibility across the entire ecosystem for fixing this.
Wonderful. I think we could go on forever, of course, but thank you so much, Jagan, for doing this. And I think you made some really interesting points, and I hope it gets to the right quarters. Thank you so much for talking to us.